Hey everyone, and welcome to the ATA podcast. I'm Matt Baird.
And I'm Andie Ho. This podcast is brought to you by the American Translators Association. Each month, we bring you news and insights from ATA. We look at what's happening across the association, explore the benefits of membership, and discuss the translation and interpreting professions.
That's right. You know, the T&I industry is always changing, and we hope this podcast will help you keep up with it. ATA was founded over 60 years ago to advance the translation and interpreting professions and foster the professional development of individual translators and interpreters. We have nearly 9,000 members in more than 100 countries.
If you'd like to know more about ATA, we'll have some information for you at the end of the show. And you'll also find links in the notes.
All right, let's get started with a few quick announcements.
ATA's annual conference is around the corner. And to help you get the most out of it, the association is offering a free webinar called E94, How to Prepare, and Pre-Conference Virtual Networking on Monday, October 2nd at 12 p.m. Eastern. The session includes tips and tricks on what to do before, during, and after the conference, a Q&A session, and breakout rooms where you can meet other attendees, so you already have some familiar faces when you hit the ground in Miami. Parts of the webinar will be recorded, so make sure to register even if you can't attend it live. To register, visit atanet.org and click on Events, then Webinar Series. Again, it will be held Monday, October 2nd at 12 p.m. Eastern. And best of all, it's open to everyone and it's completely free to attend. ATA will hold its regularly scheduled elections during the annual conference in Miami this October. This year's members will be electing a president-elect, secretary, and a treasurer, as well as 3 directors. And you don't have to be ATA certified to vote. Any associate member who can demonstrate professional engagement in the industry can apply for voting membership online. How? Visit atanet.org and click on Member Center, then become a voting member. The application is fast, free, and easy. Did you know? ATA has created 3 special interest groups, or SIGs, one for financial translators, one for interpreters and translators in education, and one for Southeast Asian languages. SIGs are similar to divisions. Members gain access to private groups to discuss terminology, share training opportunities, and find support for their unique challenges. To join or learn more, contact FTSIG at atanet.org for the Financial Translators Group, ITESIG at atanet.org for the Education Group, or SEALSIG at atanet.org for the Southeast Asian Languages Group. You can also meet the group moderators in person at the ATA Annual Conference in Miami at the Divisions and SIGs Mix and Mingle. The Mix and Mingle will be held on Wednesday, October 25th from 7 to 8 p.m., directly after the welcome celebration. See you there! It's finally International Translation Day, so be sure to check out ATA's website and social media channels to join in the celebration. Be sure to like, share, and comment so we can reach as many people as possible and remind everyone how important translators and interpreters are in the world. For information about these announcements and more, check out the links in today's show notes.
All right, we're back, everyone. And I got to say, I'm really excited about this episode for a number of reasons. And first off, I'm here with my co-host, Andie Ho, and this is the first time that we are on a podcast together, co-hosting together. And if you're fairly new to the ATA podcast, you know, Andie came on board earlier this year, and, you know, she's really brought a breath of fresh air to the show. And she's produced some great episodes this year. So if you haven't listened to them, I do recommend you go back and check them out. So Andie, here we are. Thanks for joining me today. And I think we picked a pretty good occasion to get on the mic together, don't you?
Yes, I do. It's great to be here, Matt. Thank you for having me. This episode is actually going to be released on International Translation Day. Every year, the International Federation of Translators develops a theme for International Translation Day, and this year's theme is Translation Unveils the Many Faces of Humanity. And today's show is kind of along those lines. We're going to peer into a window of the lives of 2 ATA members, one interpreter and one translator, to find out how ATA membership has had an effect on their careers.
Andy, I think you can recall when you came on board and we were brainstorming topics for the year, I told you about this one because I had spoken with both Céline and Marco at previous ATA conferences. I had learned about their stories because they're active members of ATA. They were visible, and I don't work in the same fields or language pairs as either of them. So had they not been so active, I likely would not have even heard of them and possibly not even met them.
Yeah, which is why I agreed with you. I thought it would be a great topic for International Translation Day this year. And it even ties into this year's theme a little bit. So what the International Federation of Translators is really talking about when they talk about unveiling a world of human, experiences is people who don't speak the source languages that we work in. But I thought this episode could unveil the experience of two of our members and give our listeners a glimpse into their lives and their career paths.
Exactly. And that's why we're here. So, let's bring on our guests. Andy, would you like to introduce Céline?
All right, we've got Céline Browning, who was a freelance conference interpreter for 8 years before becoming a Japanese language diplomatic interpreter with the US Department of State in July 2022. Back when she was a freelancer, she worked on topics ranging from helicopter mechanics to tidying up with Marie Kondo. She also worked with remote simultaneous interpreting before it became cool during the pandemic, and she attributes most of her clients and professional success to the ATA.
Right on. And also with us is Marco Díaz. And Marco is an ATA certified English to Spanish translator specializing in legal and business, healthcare, and technical translations. He's originally from Guatemala City and has lived first in Mexico and then in the United States for most of his life. He got a BS in mechanical engineering with a minor in electrical engineering from Tec de Monterrey in Mexico. And he has a specialized certificate in translation from the University of California, San Diego Extended Studies Program. He's volunteered in the ATA Spanish Language Division and at his local association in San Diego for 6 years. In fact, he's currently the president of the Association of Translators and Interpreters in the San Diego area, also known as ATISTA. And I think I got that right. So when Marco is not translating or managing his business, he enjoys reading books, playing the guitar, and hiking. So Céline and Marco, welcome to the ATA podcast.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here.
Thank you for inviting us to participate. Excited to be here.
Right on. Well, it is really great to have you both here. I mentioned earlier, I've spoken to you both. We've chatted at the at the conference over the years. We've shared a drink and spoken together. And we talked about this, doing this podcast, I think already over a year ago, possibly two. So it's really awesome that we're finally here making this happen. And it's also pretty cool that we were able to organize this because I'll let everybody know we're actually in 4 different time zones. So I was surprised with how easy it was to organize today's call because we're in Pacific, Central, Eastern time, and then me in Central European time, of course. So, but let's get into our topic for today. We want to first hear about you two and learn your stories. So Céline, let's start with you. Can you tell us how you got into translation and interpreting?
So yes, originally I had studied more international relations and human rights studies for both my undergraduate and graduate studies, both in Japan and Germany. But then I realized, Japanese wasn't going to get me far in Germany because my German just wasn't cutting it. And so from there, I stumbled upon the thought and the idea that, well, what do I do well in life already? And that was actually interpreting because I had grown up in Japan interpreting for my mother, who purposely didn't learn Japanese so that I would learn English. So it was something that I did second nature. And I thought, well, if I can already do this, why not put a degree next to it? So what I did is go to the Middlebury Institute for International Studies at Monterey, and I completed a degree in conference interpretation there. And yeah, that's, I guess, how I basically came into this field.
How about you, Marco? How did you start out?
Well, I would say by pure serendipity. When I lived in Chicago, I came across a Spanish teaching job. that require you to have a deep knowledge of grammar. I luckily landed the job, and as the years passed by, I was reading grammar books, and I think I had polished up my grammar quite a bit. So then from Chicago, I moved to San Diego, and in San Diego, I landed another teaching job at a school that also offered translation services. So when I was first exposed to a translation assignment, I fell in love with it, and then I pursued the specialized certificate at UCSD Extension program was called then, by recommendation from a colleague.
So, Marco, I understand when you were really new to translation, when you attended your first ATA conference in 2017 in San Francisco, was it? And I know a lot of newcomers don't take that plunge that early on for a variety of reasons, maybe financial reasons, or maybe they just never heard of the ATA conference. What made you decide to attend the ATA conference for the first time?
Yes, it was in fact, I believe it was 2016 when it was in San Francisco. Yes, I had just become a member like the previous year, 2015, and I had heard, or I think through the information from ATA, that the ATA conference is the must-attend conference for translators. So I think I was early in my career. I was also trying to pursue the ATA certification. So there was a workshop offered known as the AST Day, the conference before the conference. It was an exam preparation workshop for English to Spanish translation. So that really caught my interest, and I felt that by going to a conference will really give me better insights into the profession.
Right on. Sounds like the ATA's marketing really works. We do say it's the go-to that everyone should attend, right? So, Céline, over to you. When did you attend your first conference, and why?
Yeah, so for me, it was in 2012 when I was a first year student, barely started at Monterey. And because it was in San Diego that year, our Japanese translation professor, who is an active member, suggested that all of us in the first year make a trip down and see what it's like, meet people in the industry and meet people from our own Japanese division. And it was so inspiring. We didn't do the AST, unfortunately, not that day, but everything we experienced over those 3 days were just so fascinating, and all the passion and the nerdiness and the fact that it's okay to be a language, nerd. It was just great. And I came back with a lot of motivation and enthusiasm. Yeah.
Awesome. Marco, so how was your first experience? Tell us a little bit more about what it was like that year in San Francisco.
Yes, so I think it was a mixture of feelings. I think at first there's excitement, there's also nervousness, but I think as the days go by in the conference, there's also feelings of inspiration and mind-opening, enlightenment. I think you start figuring out how the profession works, how to be better at what you do at translating. In my case, translating. So yeah, I'm introverted, so for me it was challenging to get out of my comfort zone, but I think it was well worth it.
What about you, Céline? Did you find it overwhelming at all?
For sure. I don't know. I was this bilingual kid growing up, just doing, what I've been doing, but then suddenly I'm in this entire, conference center full of professionals who do it for a living. And something that never crossed my mind is being able to charge people for something I've done by nature. And so I was still trying to wrap my mind around that. And it was really, at the same time, shiny and new and exciting, but overwhelming and daunting. And I really didn't think I could end up measuring up to these colleagues. But no, it was all really great pressure and motivation.
Right on. Now, um, we mentioned earlier in our intro that both of you got pretty actively involved in the ATA at a fairly early stage. And I say that because there are members like me who were kind of like, you know, silent observers for a while when they first joined the ATA. And I think I was a member for nearly 10 years before I volunteered for the German language division. Um, and then there are those, I guess, like you, that just come in and get involved right away. So Céline, back to you. What motivated you then to get involved with the ATA so quickly?
Actually, I don't think that I was necessarily motivated. I'm not an introvert, but I'm very shy until you get me talking. So here I was in our annual meeting for the Japanese division, and I think it was the same professor who brought us to ATA the first year who said, "Nope, Celine, you're going to volunteer and you're going to be on the planning committee." So I think it was my second ATA conference, not San Antonio, but the one after that, which I believe is Chicago. It was then when my professor said, "Yep, Celine, you're going to be on the conference planning committee." And ever since, it went from planning to then being the secretary, then assistant administrator to administrator. So yeah, it was really just full on from the get-go almost.
Marco, how about you? Did you also get voluntold, or was it your idea?
Yes, I think I was pulled in early into volunteering, but I think volunteer really allows you to demonstrate what kind of team player you can be, and especially in your early years when you're still looking for clients, and I think learning how to work in a team really it's helpful because most likely you'll be working with a team. Even if uh, if you only work for direct clients, I think you should also consider that a teamwork. And uh, I think volunteer also allows you to find or meet like-minded colleagues and get a sense of community. Um, so yeah, I think that's how I started early volunteering.
Right on. It's really cool to hear your stories. And I've shared on this podcast several times. So most longtime listeners have heard this. But my first conference, I have a first time conference story myself. It led to my first freelance job. And so now I'm sitting here wondering if my path would have been any different had I not waited 10 years to really get involved. So, Andie, we've talked about this. What about you? I seem to recall your first conference experience having effect on you as well.
Yeah, I had no idea that. First of all, I didn't even know what a conference was when I first attended. So that was a surprise to begin with. But like Celine was saying, just this idea that I had these fellow nerds, people who, like Marco, read grammar books, whether for work or for fun, people who grew up bilingual and can get paid for something that they had to do to help their parents growing up. It was mind blowing in the best possible way. So Celine and Marco, both of you, Marco, you go first. If you could go back in time and give little young Marco any advice before you attended your first ATA conference, or if you were giving a person today advice, someone who is thinking about attending the ATA conference, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that being a freelancer, I mean, because when we are translators, as being a freelancer, you have we have an advantage in that to get started in the business, it's the investment is low, but I think making the investment of attending a conference like the ATA conference, I think it's well worth it when you're starting to get started. And yeah, I would definitely just encourage to see that it's an investment, but it's gonna you know bring benefit in the long run.
Celine, how about you? What would you tell someone or your past self?
Yeah, I have a lot of friends who still seem to be hesitant to attend conferences, and I'd really just like to say, it's not as daunting as it might seem. It's certainly not as boring as it might sound if you're not used to going to conferences. I think there's a huge mystery cloaking them. But also, yes, it's certainly not the cheapest thing to do, but really what you gain from the conference is so vast, and you know, it's just like a pot of gold, and you'll meet people that you otherwise wouldn't meet, and even in your own division, and it might not be your same topic of interest, but you still meet so many people that somehow you can collaborate with, and you end up referring for jobs and whatnot. It's just a really good way as a freelancer, especially, to get known by your colleagues so that they can learn who you are and trust you enough to refer you in the future. So really, I think through ATA, through colleagues, I've received a lot of work. I've passed on a lot of work. I think it's really a waste of an experience and an opportunity to not attend. And that's what I tell newcomers.
Wow, we should just wrap up with that. That was great. Thank you. Thank you both so much for sharing your stories today. But I always ask everybody at the end of the podcast, so if they have any final words for our listeners before we sign off. So Céline, right back at you. Anything else you want to share before we go?
You know what? I think I'm changing a little bit of how I attend the conferences now because I'm associated with an office. But I do hope to keep my personal membership going anyway, even if I don't attend conferences. So I think that is still a huge part of me. No matter what form or shape my career takes, ATA is always going to be a part of who I am and where I turn to for guidance and references. So yeah, I think I couldn't be here without ATA. Thank you for having us.
Wonderful. Marco, do you have any final words?
Yes, I would say that attending the ATA conference, has led to referrals, and it's an excellent way to stay top of mind within a network of colleagues, because you never know when the right opportunity might come up. So I think it's a matter of patience and perseverance, and I would encourage newcomers to attend the conference.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today, and we appreciate your words of wisdom.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, guys. Take care.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's a wrap. We'd like to thank everyone who helped produce today's show.
Derek Platts mixed and edited the audio. ATA headquarters provided editorial and technical support.
If you learned anything new in today's podcast, I bet there's someone out there who would like to know it too. Don't be stingy. Tell them about the podcast. I've gotten to know so many great podcasts that way. I promise they'll thank you for it.
And if you're not an ATA member, listen up. I've been a member for over 20 years. Joining ATA literally launched my freelance career. It opened the door to a profession I knew very little about, and attending my first annual conference led to my very first freelance job.
And I joined for the first time in 2004 as a student. My first conference blew my mind. Nowadays, the demand for translators and interpreters is at an all-time high, but finding quality work isn't easy. ATA membership can make the difference. And ATA isn't just for translators and interpreters. We have teachers and professors, hospital administrators, language company owners, and technology developers, just to name a few. Companies and institutions can join too. Our membership includes language companies, universities, and government agencies.
If you'd like to know more, go to ATA's website, atanet.org. You can also check out past episodes of this podcast where we talk about the benefits of membership and what's currently happening in the association.
But before you go, please take a quick moment to give us a rating or write a review. Tell us what you like, why you listen, or about your favorite guest. Your feedback is super helpful, and reviews help other listeners find the show too.
We'd really appreciate hearing from you. Thanks again for listening, everyone. Talk to you again soon.